and welcome to UC Today. I'm Kristian McCann, and today we are taking a closer look at securing hybrid environments and ensuring business continuity when a cyber incident hits your UC infrastructure. And if you're responsible for the resilience and security of your communication estate, then you are going to want to watch this because we'll be asking all the right questions, including what happens if you're hit. And that's because I'm joined by Darren Anstee, Chief Technology Officer for Security at NetScout, and he's got a great, clear view of the threats, the threat landscape, the gaps, and even the decisions that organizations should really be taking now. So, Darren, thanks for joining me today.
I hope I can live up to that. Thank you, Kristian.
Well, maybe we can just start from the beginning, give our audience a great overview. So, why is securing UC infrastructure such a pressing conversation right now? And perhaps what's changed in the last couple of years that's changed the conversation or even brought it to the top of the agenda?
I think businesses have really realized the value of collaboration across their workforce. We all went through the pandemic and people working in, disparate environments and things like that, where we didn't cooperate and collaborate as much as we had done before. And I think coming back out of that, businesses have realized that having everyone work together and having teams communicate across the organization can be very valuable in terms of productivity, in terms of, getting the business to move forward in the right kind of direction. So I think that's one side of it. I think the other side of it, and a part of the focus from the security perspective, is that attackers have also realized that there is a lot of value in the collaborative aspects of work, and that if everybody is not in the same place physically, there is the ability to kind of disrupt that collaboration, and that can interrupt productivity. It can damage an organization's ability to function fundamentally. So there's kind of the positive and the negative side of it there that has really made this a focus over the last couple of years from the customers that I speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the pandemic. That was obviously a big trigger for a
Yeah.
lot of these UC platforms. I'm pretty sure that's when most of us learned the words of Zoom or Microsoft Teams. But talking about hybrid and different ways of setting up your UC infrastructure, why are organizations kind of doing this, and what is driving it from a business perspective?
Well, I think, we already talked a little bit about what we've seen go on kind of post-pandemic, but I think businesses have realized that there is an ability to reduce costs in office space if not everyone is there all the time. They've also realized that employees want flexibility in their day-to-day working lives, and they have to balance those two things against the productivity that they need within the business. And to get the productivity that they need, you need that collaboration, you need that cooperation across teams, you need to bring people on, you need to figure out what the whole organization is doing to make sure that you drive forward with the kind of maximum velocity and agility. So I think everyone is focused on, how do you put the right hybrid working environment in place? How do you have the right guidelines? How do you make sure there's consistency so that you kind of know where people are on certain days of the week to make sure that you can have face-to-face meetings, you can have the right level of interaction?
Indeed. Knowing how things are operating and things are working, or perhaps even where people are working, was like perhaps a big benefit of being in the office. But of course, let's say a cyber incident happens and you have, your workforce scattered. You perhaps might not know who's kind of knocked out and who's kind of in. So I was wondering, perhaps you could give us a rundown. What might be the difference between a company being hit with a big cyber incident when they're on a hybrid model versus a company, that's been hit with a cyber incident and everyone's in the office?
Yeah, I mean, there's, the obvious one here is that you've got a lot of disparate infrastructures going on, a lot of which are unmanaged and invisible to, your corporate IT department. They don't know whether, your collaboration tool is potentially not working because an office is being attacked, or because there's an issue with the collaboration tool, or an issue with the internet in a certain part of the country, or even an issue with a certain internet service provider that a number of different employees are using. So the first issue here is that it can be quite difficult to figure out where the problem actually is. So that's kind of one challenge that comes with having a kind of a hybrid workforce. Where is the problem actually happening right now? Is it even a security incident, or is it just some other kind of outage that's going on? The other key challenge with this is that if you look at the process of dealing with a security incident. Obviously, we're all trying to get ahead of security incidents and put mitigations in place before there's any impact to our organization. Failing that, we try and be as reactive as possible. But after the worst happens, if there is any kind of incident, we tend to need to investigate to figure out the scope of the incident so that we can understand the level of business risk to attribute to it, and in some cases so that we can report on it if we're subject to various regulatory frameworks. That can be much more difficult if you've got employees connected to unmanaged infrastructures in different parts of, the country, on different networks and different environments, because you may not have an easy way of getting hold of, logs and packet traces and things of that nature, depending upon some choices that you've made in your IT infrastructure. So the whole kind of distribution of the employee and the fact that they're not all in the same place on the same infrastructure at the same time, and that you don't control it all as a business, can be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've just laid out the challenges really nicely. So let's say someone's listening to this conversation and they're seeing what they're up against with a hybrid workforce.
Mhm.
Once they know, what should they really be looking at and how they should respond or develop a strategy to kind of defend against these unique risks that now or these additional risks that hybrid
Yeah,
workforce brings?
I think there's a few things there. The obvious and easy and most and easiest one that all organizations tend to go for first is policy. So they all try and put policies in place around, in office time, out of office time, policies around not using unmanaged infrastructure, not sharing connectivity with others in your family, because obviously if it gets congested, you get cut off. Nobody knows whether that's an attack or another issue that might, be going on. Not using local backups, because that again can be a problem, because you can be copying confidential data out of a managed environment into an insecure environment. So there's a whole load of things that people are doing on the policy side of things. There's also changes in the way that attackers are targeting us, which have kind of altered the way that businesses think about this. So we always used to think about attackers going after kind of primary service endpoints and things like that to disrupt a business if that was their aim. These days, they're very much aware that collaboration is key to business, and that knocking over the firewalls at the edge of a major office building or something like that effectively cuts that office building off from all of those UC tools and from all of the other tools they might want to access, the SaaS, all that kind of stuff, and from all the employees that aren't in that building. So, the attackers are very much aware of that, and they're very much aware that those endpoints might not be anywhere near as well defended as those primary kind of revenue generating or business dependent services that are offered out there. So there's a lot of focus now in customers that I work with on defending the firewalls. So wherever you've got a firewall that touches the internet, making sure that there are defenses in place in front of that to prevent impact from things like DDoS attacks and things like that might knock it over.
You talking about DDoS attacks. I was wondering if we could just drill in really quickly. What
Mhm.
are the kind of main attacks that you at NetScout have really been seeing that are attacking people's UC infrastructure?
So DDoS, distributed denial of service. I think everyone knows what that is. It's been around for 30 years or so. But a kind of a brief definition is it's simply where an attacker is looking to generate traffic that consumes some or all of the resources that are assigned to a network, a service, or an application. If you look at the kind of attacks that target UC infrastructure, you can see things like SIP floods if you're going after the UC infrastructure directly. But more commonly, what you'll see is attacks targeting the firewalls that are sat in front of user populations. So there are a range of attacks that are specifically designed to exhaust state in firewalls. And of course, if you exhaust the state in a firewall, new sessions can't be established, and everybody behind that firewall loses connectivity with everything outside of that firewall. So attacks that do that have been around for a long time, but I would say have become increasingly common over the last few years as attackers have targeted kind of secondary layers of endpoints, if you see what I mean. It's the same with the stuff that we see going on now, when rather than targeting an organization that might be the kind of the front up name for a service, they go after somebody in their digital supply chain who they think may be less well defended. But if their supplemental service disappears, that primary service takes a big impact.
Okay, well, there's a lot to look out for. So I suppose people really are seeking answers. And that's why I'm going to come to you to kind of close this off, Darren. And that's if you could offer some practical advice, maybe some small steps or a big area that IT leads should be looking at if they are deploying UC in a distributed workforce, what would you say to them?
I think the big one is defend the firewalls, because obviously you've got concentrations of people in office buildings. Those firewalls need to be up for that collaboration to work. So that's kind of the first and biggest one, I would say. The second one is around the policy side of things. When you're thinking about the policies that you want to implement, think about the policies that work for those of you who are in the office, and also think about how those policies will work for people who are more remote and are not in the office 2-3 days a week, things like that, and the practicalities of not being in the office 2-3 days a week. So, make sure you've got offline backup mechanisms that are corporate approved. Make sure you've got printing capabilities that are corporate approved, so that people don't try and work around the policies to do the things that they need to do in their day-to-day lives, and by virtue of that open themselves up to new vulnerabilities and the business up to new risks fundamentally.
Excellent. Well, there's some great insights from today. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today, Darren.
Thanks for having me, Kristian. Much appreciated.
And as always, thank you to the audience for watching. If you've enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and comment. And of course, subscribe to stay in touch with more great videos like this. I'm Kristian from UC Today, and until next time, we shall see you then.